This week, 2024 campaign trail is on the road with presidential and vice presidential candidates as they spoke in Nashville, Houston, and Atlanta. Also, a look at the latest ads in the race, and a closer look with a reporter at the U.S. Senate race in Texas. But first, former President Trump was on Wednesday a guest at this year's National Association of Black Journalists conference in Chicago, where he was interviewed by reporters from ABC, Fox, and Semaphore. This exchange with ABC's Rachel Scott made headlines as the former president questioned his Democratic rival's heritage.
Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first Black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir,
of
I'm
that.
asking you a question,
No,
a
you
very
have to
direct
define
question.
it. Define it for me, if you would.
I just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So, I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly, very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was Black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn Black, and now she wants to be known as Black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she Black?
She is always identified as a Black woman. She went to a historically Black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn, and she became a Black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe that she is...
I think somebody should look into that, too, when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
It's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some Republicans have said?
I really don't know. I really don't know. Could be. There are some. And
Next, Vice President Harris's response from an appearance she made later that day at a Black sorority gathering in Houston.
Donald Trump spoke at the annual meeting of the National Association of Black Journalists. And it was the same old show. The divisiveness and the disrespect. And let me just say, the American people deserve better. The American people deserve better. The American people deserve a leader who tells the truth, a leader who does not respond with hostility and anger when confronted with the facts. We deserve a leader who understands that our differences do not divide us. They are an essential source of our strength.
Vice President Harris made a number of campaign stops in her second week as a 2024 Democratic presidential candidate, including one in Atlanta. En route there from the airport, she stopped at Pascal's restaurant in Atlanta's Castleberry Hill neighborhood.
You're just like interrupting your meal. No, you're not. Hi. Nice to meet you.
These are all our team members here.
Yeah, our team. We're planning for our community.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you all for the warm welcome.
DJ Cutthroat, nice to meet you.
All right, now.
Yes, ma'am.
Nice
yes,
to
ma'am.
meet you. Thank
yes,
you.
Ma'am. Thank you.
Good. So this is
Madam Vice President, can we get a selfie with you? Of course. Thank you. Are we getting everybody? Yes, I want everyone to stand up.
all right, sure.
Can we take a photo so we can get everyone in there?
Come on, everybody get in. Come on, we're a team.
You know it's birthday.
Oh!
I didn't tell you that.
No, you did not tell me that.
Everyone can look right at me.
All right.
Look right here. Awesome. Thank you so much. Of course. Now she has to have her black-eyed peas, fried chicken, in collard greens.
That's it.
Playing around.
That's it.
And it's not a game.
Vice President Harris's appearance in Atlanta was preceded by remarks from Senator Raphael Warnock and a performance from rapper Megan Thee Stallion. The singer of hits such as Hiss, Body and Savage told the crowd it was important they get out and vote in the fall.
some noise for Miss Harris, our future president. Let's get this done, Atlanta. Let's get this done, Atlanta. We come over here and talk to y'all.
We'll forever be there.
Because the real savage is gonna get out there and vote. I'm so happy to be here, Atlanta. We're about to make history with the first female president. The first black female president. Let's get this done, hotties. Hotties for Harris. Hi. Keep it going for a three-time Grammy award-winning superstar, Megan Thee Stallion!
Vice President Kamala Harris's first week of campaigning brought in $200 million, the Harris for President operation told reporters. It also prompted a new wave of ads from both the Harris and Trump campaigns. Next, one ad from each campaign that started airing in battleground states in recent days.
On the border, the choice is simple. Kamala Harris supports increasing the number of Border Patrol agents. Donald Trump blocked a bill to increase the number of Border Patrol agents. Kamala Harris supports investing in new technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Donald Trump blocked funding for technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Kamala Harris supports spending more money to stop human traffickers. Donald Trump blocked money to stop human traffickers. Kamala Harris prosecuted transnational gang members and got them sentenced to prison. Trump is trying to avoid being sentenced to prison. There's two choices in this election: the one who will fix our broken immigration system and the one who's trying to stop her.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
This is America's border czar, and she's failed us. Under Harris, over 10 million illegally here. 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl. Brutal migrant crimes. And ISIS now here.
Do you have any plans to visit the border? You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
Kamala Harris failed, weak, dangerously liberal.
Vice President Harris is also in the final days of choosing her running mate. She's expected to make the announcement ahead of Tuesday, when she'll start a 5-day tour with her running mate through critical swing states, including Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. They'll kick it off on Tuesday in Philadelphia. Look for coverage of these events next week on the C-SPAN networks, on cspan.org, and on our free C-SPAN Now mobile app. Two of this year's presidential candidates, Republican nominee and former President Donald Trump and independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., made a stop at last weekend's 2024 Bitcoin conference in Nashville. Both men pitched themselves as champions of cryptocurrency, though Mr. Kennedy openly questioned the former president's commitment to crypto.
Now, I'm very happy to learn that I'm not the only one talking about Bitcoin in this year's election. Nothing could make me more joyful than to see other political leaders now jumping on the Bitcoin bandwagon. I've had over a year's head start to study, to understand, to articulate the potential of Bitcoin. And my goal as the first Bitcoin president will be to enact policies that will make America the world's greatest representative for Bitcoin and a proponent of its democratic values. I grew up assuming that America would always maintain its status as the world leader, the leader of the free world. But ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1993, we've paradoxically been moving in a declining spiral away from that role. Hubris, military adventurism, and corruption have put America's political and economic power in precipitous decline. Our dollar is rapidly losing its reserve currency status because we've weaponized it against other countries. When we disagree with the policies of another country, we kick them off the SWIFT system and we debank them. As a predictable result of that strategy, the BRICS nations are now in the process of de-dollarizing by getting off the petrodollar. They realize that trading their commodities and other hard resources for money that is printed out of thin air is a losing proposition. This trend will likely accelerate until we make the tough transition toward backing our debt obligations with hard assets again. I have a plan to strengthen the U.S. dollar and lower the interest rates and neutralize our $34 trillion debt by backing U.S. Treasury bills, notes, and bonds with hard assets, including a combination of precious metals and Bitcoin. Backing U.S. debt obligations by collateralizing them with hard assets not only restores strength to the dollar, it reins in inflation, and it will usher in a new era of American financial stability, prosperity, and peace. The world needs to believe that we have safely handcuffed our government and its ability to create money out of thin air with no proof of work. The innovative strategy that I am proposing leverages the scarcity and liquidity of Bitcoin, along with gold and other hard assets, to restore the dollar's dominance in global finance. The world will rush to adopt an American-backed, decentralized currency that cannot be confiscated by governments, that can be traded and transacted on cell phones at the speed of light across every global border with no banking fees or other transactional friction. This incorruptible currency will immediately start pulling wealth and assets from every other nation around the globe back into the United States, restoring the strength of our dollar and repairing our balance of payments.
Next, some of former President Trump's speech at the Nashville Bitcoin conference.
Ultimately, my promise to each and every one of you is this: I will be the pro-innovation and pro-Bitcoin president that America needs and our citizens deserve. This will be one industry, but this will be a thriving industry, a great industry, and I'm going to be doing the same thing for every other industry also. Our nation has never thrived by trying to censor new ideas and shut down the dreams of our people. America always plants our flag on the next frontier and pushes boldly ahead. We have to do that. We haven't been doing that for a long time, especially the last 3.5 years. It's gone the exact opposite. Those of you in this room inherit the legacy of generations of American pioneers and patriots, risk-takers and renegades who settled this continent, built the modern world, and lived on the bleeding edge. You live on a bleeding edge. You do know that, Bitcoiners, don't you? You are the modern-day Edisons and Wright brothers and Carnegies and Henry Fords, and what you do in your lifetime stands a chance to outlive us all and inspire humanity for generations to come. This will go down as a very important day in the history of your industry. Together, you are building America's future with your own smarts, your own grit, and your own skin in the game. You have a lot of skin in the game, and that's what you're doing. It takes courage to do it. Most people don't have that courage. My job will be to set you free and to let you do what Americans do best and what you're going to do better than anybody. Win, win, win. You're going to win, win, win. With energy, passion, and brilliance like we have rarely seen before, our country cannot fail. We're in a failing nation right now, but we're not going to be for long. Our country cannot fail. With your help, we will save our nation, we will restore our republic, and we will make America and Bitcoin bigger, better, stronger, richer, freer, and greater than ever before. Thank you all. Have a good time with your Bitcoin and your crypto and everything else that you're playing with. And we're going to make that one of the greatest industries on earth. Good luck, and God bless you all. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
2024 Republican vice presidential nominee Senator J.D. Vance was also out on the campaign trail this week, speaking at rallies in Nevada and Arizona. He also visited the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona on Thursday. Next, some of his remarks during that visit.
It's hard to believe until you see it with your own eyes just how bad the policies of the Kamala Harris administration have been when it comes to the southern border. They started their administration. Kamala Harris came into office making promises, and she kept those promises to open the American southern border. They stopped deportations on day one. They stopped construction of the border wall on day one. We see the border wall sitting here, ready to be completed behind us, and that can't happen because of Kamala Harris's administration. They reinstated catch and release, and they stopped remain in Mexico. So all of these asylum claimants who come to our border, they can now get released into our country because they're not forced to stay in Mexico while we adjudicate their asylum claims. And we have to remember that as terrible and idiotic as these policies were, they cause real human beings to suffer. A lot of you know my story, and I have been a little kid waiting at the bedside of his mother, angry that his mom took something that she shouldn't have taken, but praying to God, please, Jesus, let her wake up. And the unfortunate truth is, because of the poison that Kamala Harris has let come into this country, there are a lot of those prayers that won't be answered. There are a lot of parents that won't wake up, because when you take fentanyl, you don't wake up. It takes your life. So there are a lot of kids out there who have been deprived of second chances with their moms and dads. There are a lot of moms and dads out there who will never see their kids walk down the aisle because of what Kamala Harris has unleashed at this border. Every time I ask these guys, and I even asked, Brandon, Paul, let's play devil's advocate here. Tell me, has Kamala Harris done anything you've asked her to do? She is the border czar. Has your border czar done anything you've asked her to do? And the answer is no. They send letters, they make phone calls, they are begging the American president and vice president for leadership, and their own border czar ignores them. That is a scandal, that is a disgrace, and to every American watching this, it will stop, but only if you elect Donald J. Trump president in just a few months. God bless you guys.
Senator Ted Cruz is considered one of the Democrats' top targets in the U.S. Senate races this year. Here to talk about Representative Colin Allred's attempts to replace Senator Cruz is Jasper Scherer. He is a politics reporter with the Texas Tribune. Jasper, what's been the theme of this race from both the Democrat and Republican?
Well, there are a few things going on, but one common thread is that both candidates are kind of trying to position themselves as sort of the bipartisan, sort of reasonable, legislator or would-be legislator, and trying to paint their opponent as sort of a partisan warrior who is representative of the gridlock we're seeing in Congress. Sort of I guess Colin Allred is sort of leaning into Ted Cruz's well-known reputation as sort of this right-wing fighter, especially on immigration, a big topic in Texas, sort of pinpointing Cruz as one of the roadblocks, in the failure, going back to the 1980s, but even more recently, stopping bipartisan immigration reform. On the other hand, Ted Cruz has been trying to kind of define Colin Allred. He's still pretty, he's not very widely known outside his congressional district in Dallas. So right now, Cruz is kind of trying to paint him as sort of an acolyte of Joe Biden, and then more recently Kamala Harris. And so that's really, both folks trying to position themselves as bipartisan and, paint the other as sort of the right wing or left wing boogeyman.
These two politicians are fairly well known to C-SPAN audiences, but how do Texas voters view Senator Cruz and Representative Allred?
Well, I think one point to remember is that in poll after poll, Cruz is actually one of the more popular of statewide voters. He ranks as one of the more popular statewide officials in Texas. His favorables are it's very polarized, but he typically, if you compare him to John Cornyn, his Senate counterpart, he's just a lot more popular with the Republican base. That's always been, that's a big part of what rescued him in his close scare against Beto O'Rourke in 2018. the rural voters really came out in full force to save him and make the margin of difference there. So, I think Republicans, that's one of his big strengths is they see him as this fighter who's going to, be uncompromising for their beliefs. On the other hand, Allred, like I mentioned, he's still, I think, kind of trying to, define himself on his own terms, make, folks in Houston, everywhere outside of Dallas just simply aware that he exists. And then also, trying to sort of hone the argument that same, that same reputation that Cruz has that endears him so much to his base is part of what has, ground Congress to a standstill. So I think that's sort of what we're seeing now with 100 days to go.
You wrote this piece recently for the Texas Tribune talking about how Representative Allred was taking an unusual tack for Democrats, at least this cycle, in bringing up immigration at some of his campaign events. Can you tell us more about your reporting on that? What's been his approach and how is that kind of molding itself to what voters in Texas are looking for this cycle?
Yeah, definitely. So immigration and the border sort of, they're two separate topics, but also, interrelated, consistently, again, rank among the top issues for Texas voters, just in terms of their concerns, what they're thinking about. So, and on the other hand, Democrats just have not, in statewide races, really developed an effective messaging strategy. They haven't really defined what they want to do, and they have a difficult task. They're kind of two opposing camps in the party to sort of oversimplify things. But, it's a very tough and complicated issue for Democrats to be running on. But I think Allred, what we've seen from him sort of in the early days of this campaign is he's trying to define what he supports. If he's Senator Colin Allred, here's the legislation that I would introduce, or that would be my ideal framework. He's talked about specific bills. Veronica Escobar, a representative from El Paso, introduced a bipartisan bill that he has co-sponsored. So sort of laying out a mix of, sort of border security or more restrictive measures combined with, much needed reforms. You could argue which reforms would be best to pursue, but we all know that there needs to be some sort of reform to the legal immigration system. He's talking about that a lot, and then also just what to do with the 12 million plus folks who are in the country with the undocumented status. So he's trying to talk about these things more intentionally than I think than Beto O'Rourke did in 2018 or in his 2022 run for governor against Greg Abbott. And then Ted Cruz, on the other hand, is I was talking about how he's trying to position himself as sort of this newly bipartisan kind of legislator. And basically his argument is that he can kind of walk and chew gum at the same time. He can be this fighter for GOP principles while also working with moderate Democrats, what have you. And the border is one of those issues, border and immigration, where Cruz has been talking about, just making what he sees as more reasonable proposals, kind of piecemeal changes below the surface that, maybe get slipped into a budget bill and folks don't really recognize. So that's sort of how immigration is playing out so far. And I know it's going to dominate the rest of the campaign all the way up until the election.
You mentioned the 2018 Senate race in Texas with Beto O'Rourke. A lot of outside money coming from outside Texas into that race. Democrats were really hoping to turn it. Are we looking at something potentially similar where there's a lot of outside money coming into this race?
I think almost certainly. I mean, we have seen a lot of that already. There's no signs of it really slowing down. I think you mentioned at the top, this is one of Democrats' top pickup opportunities, one of their only potentially realistic shots, arguably. So I think just by virtue of that alone guarantees we're going to see some, a continued investment from, East Coast, et cetera. I think it's also kind of just par for the course for, any top of the ticket Texas race these days. I think there have been some exceptions, when in that 2018 race, when Beto O'Rourke was at the top of the ticket, the Democrat running against Governor Greg Abbott, that cycle struggled to fundraise. That was not seen as viable of a race. Just, to name one example, donors will sit out races in Texas that they don't see as competitive. But generally speaking, if there's, a big name at the top of the ticket and, they don't just drag Joe Smith off the street to run as a Democrat, it's going to be tens of millions of dollars. It seems like every cycle we're breaking the records set in the last major race. So I think, especially if Kamala Harris is, I guess you'd call it a surge or kind of a resurgent rebound, if that continues and, Texas actually starts to look competitive, there are signs that are competitive, it's going to be a total gusher of money for sure.
Jasper Scherer, politics reporter at the Texas Tribune. Thanks so much for your time and expertise.
Thanks, Nate.
Last two ads in the Texas U.S. Senate race that started airing in the past week.
I'm Colin Allred. Fentanyl is flooding into our country. Our border is broken, and so are our politics. To fix it, we've got to go after the cartels and fix the border. We've got to do it in a way that upholds our values. Values passed down from my grandfather, a customs officer in Brownsville. I stood up to Joe Biden on the border and to extremists like Ted Cruz who prefer chaos to real solutions. I'm Colin Allred. I'm running for Senate to fix this problem.
Congressman Allred. Congressman Allred. Congressman Allred. Congressman Allred. Why did you share the stage with a drag queen activist who supports sex change surgeries for minors?
You recently attended a black tie dinner in North Texas that has distributed over $25 million. Why are you supporting Biden's open border policies?
We'll get the Capitol Police for you.
Do you regret calling for the release of millions of...
Congressman Allred, do you still consider a border wall to be racist?
Do you believe Joe Biden can handle another 4 years?
Why did you vote against condemning Biden's open border policies after the murder of Laken Riley?
A reminder, this program and all of C-SPAN's campaign 2024 coverage can be found online at cspan.org/campaign.